There is an immutable law of nature that 100 years from now, everyone you know, including yourself, will be completely gone. Lifespan seems to be predetermined from the very moment we take our first breath. Every living creature on this planet possesses its own ultimate limit. Some species have a life cycle measured in mere days, while others are virtually immortal. So what is it that truly dictates the lifespan of a species? In the world of biology, there is a highly entertaining hypothesis. All mammals are granted a fixed quota of roughly 1 to 1.5 billion heartbeats for their entire lifetime. And the smaller the animal, the more extravagantly they spend it. Take the tiny mouse, for example. With a heart rate racing like a Formula One car at 600 beats per minute, the mouse quickly goes bankrupt on its cardiac budget and passes away after just 2 to 3 years. On the other hand, the giant elephant takes its sweet time with a heart beating at a leisurely 30 beats per minute. Because it spends its budget so frugally, it can live up to 70 long years. Hearing this, some lazy folks might rejoice and exclaim, "See, that is exactly why I lie on the couch all day to save my heartbeats. Why bother exercising just to run out of my quota faster?" But unfortunately for them, nature does not operate in such a mechanical way. Just look at human beings. Women actually have a resting heart rate that is 5 to 10% faster than men, yet statistics show they live significantly longer. Clearly, the internal battery charger of life is far more complex than we think, and it is closely tied to a special privilege enjoyed by giants known as Peto's paradox. According to conventional logic, the larger a creature's body, the more cells it possesses. And the more cells that divide, the higher the mathematical probability that a cellular error will occur, leading to cancer. However, blue whales and elephants are almost completely immune to this deadly disease. What is the conspiracy theory here? Are they hiding some secret ancient remedy? No science has proven that they possess a literal army of super tumor-suppressing genes, such as the p53 gene. These genes are duplicated multiple times within their DNA, ready to completely annihilate any rebellious cell right from the get-go. Hacking the game of life. Meanwhile, down in the underwater world, some aquatic residents have chosen to straight-up hack the game of life. First, consider the lobster and its oversized armor. They are biologically immortal. Their cells do not undergo typical aging because the enzyme telomerase continuously extends the caps of their chromosomes. But life is not a fairy tale. Lobsters do not die of old age. Instead, they die because their fashion choices become too heavy. As they grow, their shells become larger and harder. Eventually, a day comes when they no longer have the strength to shed their old armor, and they die of sheer exhaustion while trying to change clothes. Next is the immortal jellyfish, scientifically known as Turritopsis dohrnii. Every single time it grows old, falls ill, or gets injured, it automatically activates a built-in reset feature, reverting itself back to its infant stage known as a polyp. It essentially starts a brand new game from the very beginning. And then there is the glass sponge. It can live for up to 10,000 years in the deep ocean without needing a brain or a nervous system. At this point, the overthinking crowd might take the opportunity to argue, aha, it turns out that having a brain is exactly what causes depression and rapid aging. Living for 10,000 years without even knowing you exist is truly the pinnacle of inner peace. But through the lens of real hard science, their secret to longevity does not lie in psychology. Instead, it lies in a physical structure so bizarre that it shatters our conventional definition of a living organism. Molecular biology research on the species Hexactinellida, also known as the glass sponge. Unlike humans or most animals on Earth, which are built from billions of separate individual cells, the glass sponge is essentially one giant syncytium. This means their body completely lacks internal cell membranes to separate one cell from another. Instead, they are a continuous mass of cytoplasm sharing the same fluid, the same nutrient source, and hosting millions of cell nuclei living together peacefully under one single roof. This unique shared living arrangement grants the glass sponge two ultimate privileges to hack its lifespan: eradicating cancer right in the bud. Because there are no distinct cellular boundaries, they never experience the nightmare of a single rebellious cell acting selfishly and cloning itself into a tumor, like in higher animals. If a specific region of cell nuclei shows signs of DNA damage, the self-destruction system of the entire syncytium will immediately isolate and vaporize that exact area without causing any harm to the rest of the body. A perpetual state of hibernation, under extreme deep-sea pressure. Living thousands of meters below the surface, where the water temperature constantly hovers around 2 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius, the glass sponge drops its metabolic rate to almost absolute zero. They do not actively hunt for prey. They simply sit perfectly still and filter floating organic matter. Chemical reactions inside them occur so incredibly slowly that free radicals, the primary culprits behind aging, are barely produced at all. To put it simply and humorously, the glass sponge manages to live so long because it completely gave up the privilege of being a collection of individual distinct cells, choosing instead to become a homogeneous hot pot of life. They have essentially transformed themselves into the ocean's refrigerator to freeze biological time while opting for a lifestyle where 90% of their body is composed of inorganic silica glass fibers. Do you want to avoid aging, disease, and stress? Take a lesson from the glass sponge. Turn yourself into a mindless block of glass. Dial your pace of life down to ultra slow motion and dissolve your personal ego into the absolute void. The unwritten law of evolution. Why was evolution so incredibly generous as to grant a reset button to the jellyfish and biological immortality to the lobster, yet so stingy with the vast majority of other species? Let us look at the disposable soma theory, a brutal, unwritten law of nature. Evolution is like a cold, calculating CEO. He does not care how happy you are or how long you live. He only cares whether you manage to pass on your genes before you kick the bucket. The body's energy budget is strictly finite, forcing you to choose between one of two investment portfolios: Portfolio A, maintaining the body, or the soma, which involves repairing and upgrading cells to live longer. Portfolio B, reproduction, which means breeding fast and breeding often to sustain the population. Lowly, vulnerable creatures that could be eaten by a predator at any given second, like mice or dragonflies, will always choose the strategy of living fast. Investing in a body that might become cat food tomorrow is a terrible financial loss. Instead, they prefer to channel all their energy into producing as many offspring as possible, and then they retire early. Conversely, apex predators at the top of the food chain, or creatures with impenetrable armor like crocodiles and sea turtles, can afford to take their time and invest heavily in cellular repair systems to live for hundreds of years. Nature does not possess a conscious mind to intentionally hand out diseases, but evolution has a built-in self-balancing mechanism. If a species becomes too successful and dominant, a biological time bomb is automatically triggered to keep its numbers in check, preventing it from consuming all available resources and causing its own extinction. The human emergency brake, Cora. Now let us talk about human beings, the self-proclaimed apex primates. Why is it that we are extraordinarily intelligent, sit comfortably at the very top of the food chain, never have to worry about being mauled by a tiger or bitten by a shark on a daily basis? Yet our lifespan remains tightly locked around the threshold of 80 to 100 years old. Conspiracy theorists will undoubtedly claim humanity is actually just an experimental product inside a massive simulation, and death is a technical glitch that the cosmic programmers intentionally refuse to patch. Or even more terrifyingly, the creator knows all too well that if humans, creatures who are both deeply greedy and possess a terrifying capacity for destruction, were given immortality, it would take only a few centuries for us to completely drain all resources and turn this planet into a desolate wasteland. Therefore, human death is the emergency brake that nature installed to protect itself. From a purely biological standpoint, we were simply too greedy when we decided to allocate so much energy to nourish a highly complex brain. We constantly exhaust our resources thinking, worrying, chasing deadlines, and overthinking. We cannot have it both ways. We cannot possess an intelligent brain capable of deep suffering while simultaneously demanding a mindless body that can live for 10,000 years like a glass sponge. The magnificent diversity of lifespans we witness today is by no means a random coincidence. At its core, it is the result of an incredibly rigorous process of natural selection spanning millions of years. Every single species with faulty genetic codes or an unsustainable lifespan was entirely wiped out long ago in the ancient past. Human lifespan, in the grand scheme of things, is a fair contract with nature. We trade in everything for one glorious century of vibrant living, a century where we can love, create, and be consciously aware of our own existence. And when the biological clock strikes its final hour, we can peacefully step aside and make room for the next generation.